Photoshop gives you lots of flexibility to change the edits that you make. In this video, we'll explore how to undo, redo, and step back in time as you're editing. You can follow along with this file from the practice files for this tutorial or an image of your own. Let's start by making some paint strokes on this image. Select the brush tool in the Tools panel. Then go over to the Swatches panel and click on a color there. You can use any color that you like. Move into the image and make a brush stroke. By the way, if your brush tip isn't big enough, go up to the options bar for the brush tool. Click on the brush picker and set the size there. I'll click off of that picker to close it. Let's make a couple more strokes. Go to the Swatches panel again, select another color and stroke. And let's do that one more time. So let's say that you want to get rid of the last action that you did in Photoshop, in this case, making that pink stroke. The quick way to do that is to use a keyboard shortcut, Command+Z on the Mac or Control+Z on Windows, which I'll do now. And the pink stroke goes away. I can bring it back by pressing Command+Z again or Control+Z again. So that keyboard shortcut is a toggle for undoing and redoing the last action that you took. If you prefer to use a menu command rather than the shortcut, you can go up to the Edit menu, and there you can choose Undo, and Photoshop even tells you what action you're going to undo. And then Edit and Redo. Now, what if you want to undo more than just one step? In that case, go up to the Edit menu, and this time choose Step Backward. And you can do that up to 50 times by default. And each time, you're stepping back one action, one step in time. Similarly, you can step forward one step at a time. Edit, step forward. Edit, step forward. Edit, step forward. There's one more way that you can step through time in Photoshop, and that's using the History panel. The History panel is located here in this collapsed column of panels. If you don't see it, go up to the Window menu and choose History. I'm going to expand this panel by moving down to its bottom bar until I see a double-pointed arrow and then dragging down. So what we see in this panel is a separate bar for each action that I just took on this image. Open and then 3 strokes with the brush tool. Keep your eye on the panel as I make another stroke. My 4th stroke was just recorded in the History panel too. Now let's use another tool to see how it's recorded. Go to the Tools panel and this time select the Dodge tool, which is used to make things lighter. The Dodge tool also has a brush tip, just like the brush tool. To make the Dodge tool tip bigger, go up to the options bar for this tool, and there you have a size slider that you can drag. And then click in a blank area to close the brush picker. Now come into the image and let's drag over the leaf a couple times. Each time I release my mouse and then drag again, another Dodge tool state is recorded here in the History panel. The beauty of having these states in the History panel is that you can step back through them one by one, like this, or you can jump to a particular state, like this. And each time you do that, everything in the image changes to the way it looked at that state, at that point in time. You also can step forward or jump forward in time in the History panel, like this. 2 things to keep in mind about the History panel. If you do go back to a previous state, let's go back here, and then you do something else. Let's say I dodge in this area of the image. Keep your eye on the History panel, and you'll see that everything after the state I'd gone back to disappears. It's as if you went back to a fork in the road and took a different path. Everything on the first road beyond the fork disappears. And the second thing to keep in mind is that when you close the image, whether or not you save it, your history disappears. And the next time you open the image, the History panel will be cleared out and will start again with a fresh history. Now, if the History panel isn't your cup of tea, you can rely on the simple commands in the Edit menu instead. Undo for single undos, and step backward for multiple undos. Either way, you have lots of flexibility to correct any mistakes or try new approaches as you edit an image. Saving is a critical step in Photoshop, so let's see how to do it safely. To start, open this image from the tutorial practice files. Now let's make a change to this file. Let's move this small inset photo to somewhere else in the image. To do that, go to the Tools panel and click on the first tool, the Move tool. And then, moving to the image, click right on the small bouquet photo and drag it somewhere else in the image. I'll just put it here. You can put it anywhere you like. By the way, if that didn't work for you, it's probably because you're not on the right layer. We'll learn a lot more about selecting a layer later in the tutorial series, but for now, you can avoid that problem by just going over to the Layers panel and making sure that you have the small bouquet layer highlighted. And then try dragging that bouquet again. Now that we've made a change to the image, let's see what happens if we use the Save command to save the image with that change. I'll go up to the File menu, and I'll choose Save. And what happened is that Photoshop went right ahead and saved over and replaced the last version of this image, in this case, the original file that we started with. And that's something you don't often want to do. So let me show you a safer way to save that doesn't save over the last version. Let's make another change. Again, with your Move tool selected, click on that small bouquet photo and move it somewhere else in the image. I'll put mine down here, but you can put yours anywhere. Go up to the File menu, and this time, don't choose Save. Instead, choose Save As. That opens this Save As dialog, where you can avoid saving over the last version of your file by doing something different, like changing the file name or choosing a different location to which to save the file. By the way, if you're on Windows, this dialog box may look slightly different. It does offer the same options that we'll talk about, but they're just arranged slightly differently. So what I'm going to do to avoid saving over the last version of this image is to give this version a new name. I'll go to the Save As field here. That's the file name field if you're on Windows. And I'll click just to the right of the name before the .psd extension, and I'm going to type -v2 for version 2. Now, if I were to come down and click Save, although I'm not going to do that just yet, I'd end up with two files, the last saved version of the file and this changed version. So that's a simple way to protect your last saved version, which is sometimes your original, of an image. Before we do click Save, let's take a look at another important thing in this Save As dialog. That's the Format menu here on a Mac. It's called the Save as Type menu on Windows. It's a good idea to save your files in the native Photoshop format, which gives them a .psd extension while you're working on them. To do that, choose Photoshop from this drop-down menu, and if you have layers in your file, as we do, make sure that the Layers box is checked. The big advantage of saving as a PSD is that it will preserve any layers or other editable Photoshop features that you may have added to the image so that you can come back and work with those again later. But you can't see a .psd file on the web. And if you're sharing it with someone who doesn't have Photoshop, they might not be able to open a .psd file, a Photoshop file. So if you want to share an image that you've worked on in Photoshop, I suggest you save another copy of it in addition to the .psd and save that copy in the JPEG format. The JPEG file could be posted online, it will be smaller to send by email, and it will keep any photos in an image looking good. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go to my Format menu, and I'll choose JPEG. And then I'll go down to the bottom right and click Save. That triggers this small window of JPEG options. I suggest you just leave these at their defaults and click OK. Finally, here are a couple bonus tips about saving. First, save often. Don't wait until you're done to save a file you're working on. Second, save early. This is especially important if you've created a new file from scratch with the new command, because until you do save, that file hasn't been permanently saved to your system and could be lost if your computer crashes.